Hello my Funatics, I am very excited to introduce you to a new project that I'm doing with a friend of mine, Kelly. Do you want to introduce yourself?
What is going on, everyone? My name is Under the Radar, and I am so pumped to be doing this new series with you, Sam.
Oh yeah, I'm pumped to be doing it with you too. We're going to be doing like a Pokemon Sun and Moon speculation video. We're going to be looking at newly released and leaked Mons and what their stats and abilities and movesets and even typing will be. So obviously before we go into this, big spoiler warnings because we will be talking about stuff that hasn't really been announced or anything yet. So click off if that's going to trigger you. So yeah, but really excited about this. So we're going to start where we probably should start, with the starters and the final evolutions of them. So do you want to talk about Rowlet's line and the final evolution there first, Kelly?
Sure thing. I think that Rowlet's evolution is probably the most poor design out of the three of them, but that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people seem to love this final evolution of it. I definitely think it's going to stick with the whole grass flying type thing. Normally when things have a dual typing at the very beginning, such as Bulbasaur, it sticks through it all the way. And I think that this thing is actually going to have the ability Overgrow, just as the rest of the grass starters have. And I think for a hidden ability, it's going to have a really unique type of thing to go along with the whole archer type theme, and it's going to have the hidden ability Sniper.
Very cool. I like that a lot. Just to say, I quite like the design. I think it's a pretty cool design. I'm a fan of owls though, so I think it's pretty good. But yeah, Sniper's a really cool option for a hidden ability. It makes sense being able to like take down things from a distance. So yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And Overgrow, yeah, grass type, makes sense. In terms of the stats, we kind of came up with a spread that should appear on your screen right now. These are obviously very speculative, could be completely different, and if you disagree, feel free to comment in the comment section below because I'd love to hear your ideas. But yeah, we thought that it would be really fast. Flying type, it's a hunter. I think that speed makes sense, and also grass flying is pretty bad defensively, so it kind of wants to be fast to outspeed things, take them out before they get to hit it. And we weren't sure whether it would be a physical or a special attacker because arrows are physical things that hit you, but then you fire them from a range. So we kind of hedged our bets and went with like attack and special attack being equal and kind of usable if you get boosting moves but not too high. And then defenses as an HP kind of being middling. So that's what we thought. We're going off a base stat total of 530 because that's kind of average for starter final evolution. So all of these will have a base stat total of 530 and they're all very speculative. So in terms of viability, what do you think about it, Kelly?
I think that in Viability, it's kind of going to suffer a lot just because of its typing. With Ice Shard being so prevalent, with it not having the most offensive stats in the world, it's going to rely a lot on being either A, mixed attacker, or B, a choiced attacker. So if this thing got access to moves like Brave Bird and Leaf Storm, then those are two extremely hard-hitting stabs that this thing could run a Life Orb, break down some walls, and be good in lower tiers, but in higher tiers, it is still very hard to wall it. It's outsped by a lot of Megas, and with Megas having access to like Fake Out with Mega Lop and Medicham, it can really hinder it because of its really poor defenses and weakness to rocks.
Yeah, I agree. Its weaknesses and weakness to rock could really hold it back. And also, it does have relatively good offensive typing, but steel types are really going to stop it in its tracks. So that's not great either. Interesting to mention that there's a potential move it gets called Laser Focus that means that its next attack will be a crit, and that might work nicely with Sniper, but if it gets Focus Energy, that lasts longer, and if it holds the Scope Lens, then it should always crit if it gets a Focus Energy off, so that could be an interesting set to see, but I agree, probably not all that viable, so I see it sitting quite comfortably in RU maybe.
Maybe even as low as NU, depending on the moves that it gets. Because if it also gets access to moves like Taunt, Leech Seed, things like that, it could be a little bit of a utility mon as well.
Yeah, that would be quite cool to see. So we're going to give all Pokemon in this series a viability grading, like A, B, C. So Kelly, what do you think about this Pokemon? What grade are you going to give it?
I'm going to give this thing a C-, just because it is very reliant on a bunch of ifs to become viable, and I don't like relying on ifs to make something viable.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'd be a bit more generous and say C, C+, the higher end of Cs. But you guys let us know what you think and if we're being really mean to your favorite Pokemon. Let us know in the comment section below. So we'll move on now to Litten and its final evolution. I really like this Pokemon and it's probably going to be my starter choice. I really like the color palette and I think that it just looks like a badass when it finally evolves. A lot of people don't like it too much. What I'm kind of scared of though is that it'll be a fire fighting type, which is not something I want to see, and please don't laugh because it's not funny. I want it to be something different. We've seen firefighting way too much, so I'm kind of hoping for a fire dark type. I think that would be really cool. There'd be powerful stab attacks and it would just be interesting to see something a little bit different. Houndoom being the only other fire dark, I think. I might be wrong. Yeah, and then do you want to talk about abilities, Kelly?
Sure thing. First off, I want to say, though, I would be okay with firefighting because this thing has some massive potential for some really hard-hitting firefighting stabs.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Ability-wise, obviously going to have Blaze. And I think that the first ability that this thing could have as a hidden ability would be Intimidate, because this thing is just so massive looking and so ominous almost that it could really have that really cool Intimidate ability. We've seen mons like Mega Manectric that have Intimidate that don't really look like they deserve it. So I really think that this could fit it.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of dogs get it, but this could be the first cat with Intimidate. I thought of something a bit different for the ability. I would quite like to see Limber. We know that Persian gets Limber, another cat, and paralysis is one of the most annoying things to have to deal with. So being immune to that with Limber would be really cool, and seeing that as a kind of a viable option on an attacking Pokemon, I would quite like to see that. So yeah, do you want to go on and talk about the stats for this Pokemon, Kelly?
Sure thing. I think that this thing is going to have a pretty decent speed stat of base 100, so that way it can outspeed things like Darmanitan, the Nidos, and things of that nature, and still be a very good, decent wall breaker for its speed. I think that its defenses aren't going to be terrible, but they're not going to be amazing. It looks like it can be a little bit of a neutral ground defensive mon with 80 HP, 90 defense, and 75 in special defense. I think this thing's special attack is going to be absolutely pitiful. I think it's going to be an absolutely terrible special attack. However, I do think this thing's attack set is going to be through the roof. Base 120 attack with really good stabs could make this thing very, very powerful.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It definitely looks like more of a physical attacker, so I can definitely see that being the case. And in terms of viability, if it does have that really powerful attack stat, along with powerful attacks to go with it, like Flare Blitz, maybe Knock Off, even Sucker Punch, these could be really, really potent and make it a very viable sweeper. Again, it could get access to setup, things like Bulk Up or Hone Claws or even Swords Dance would be really nice to see, and that could make it very scary to face. So I would like all of those things, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this Pokemon, because it will be very powerful. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think, Kelly?
I think that this mon, it has a lot of potential just because of how powerful it could be and how strong its two stabs are, whether it's firefighting or fire dark. Both extremely strong, hard-hitting stabs with Flare Blitz, knock off, close combat, anything like that. This thing could even, as you said, have priority Sucker Punch. This thing could get access to the new move Throat Chop, so it could be incorporated that way. Like, there's a lot of stuff that this thing could have to make it very unique. However, I don't think it'll be strong enough or fast enough to survive in the OU tier.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that there are lots of fast fire types already that probably do a good job, which would make it a bit less used, but I don't think that would make it any less powerful or viable. So I would say a strong UU contender.
Definitely, and if not a strong UU, it'll definitely be a strong RU. Whatever tier it fits in with those, it'll definitely be like very strong in it.
Yeah, so in terms of the grade that I'm going to give it, I would like to give it an A-, I think. I would like to see it maybe just getting into OU, but that's probably pushing it a little bit. What do you think, Kelly?
I can see this thing having a solid B. Like, it's pretty cool. It'll be one of those cool mons that you bring up to OU to try to make work, and I think that'll make it very unique.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That is fair enough.
Along with having access to really cool utility moves like Taunt and things of that nature to make it really cool for other bulky wall breakers.
Yeah, very good, very good. So now let's move on to Popplio, and I know that Pokemon is very dear to your heart, so why don't you talk about this one, Kelly?
This is the best evolution of the three of them. by far. This thing, I really think it's going to have the ability, I'm sorry, the typing Water Fairy. Having the ability Water Fairy is really, really unique in whatever tier it ends up being in, just because it has such great defensive capabilities. And I think for its ability, it's actually going to have a pretty unique one in Torrent as the regular, because that's what all water mounts
Very
have.
unique, yeah.
Very unique there. And then the hidden ability, I think, is actually going to be Water Veil. What this allows it to do is this allows it to switch into Scalds and never get burnt, so you have a very, very good Scald switch in.
Yeah, we don't see too much Water Veil at the moment. I know in PU there's Floatzel, but that's only really the only Pokemon that I know runs it regularly, so that would be really cool to see for this Pokemon. Yeah, I like that. I would also, there are some other abilities that I kind of think got potential but would be a bit scared to mention, like it being a fairy type, maybe Magic Guard, but that would be way too good, so I'm hoping that's not the case.
Instant OU.
It would be horrible. But then maybe also something like Swift Swim, because we don't really see, we've seen Mega Swampert have that, but that's the only other starter water type that gets Swift Swim. So it would potentially be cool to see another starter get that as an ability. So yeah, I think that would be quite cool. And in terms of stats, we've talked about this one. We definitely think this one looks like the bulkiest out of all the starters. Probably has the most HP, so we're going at 90 there. Middling speed and relatively low attack. Defense is only okay, but its special stats are where it really shines, because it may well get that fairy type. A lot of fairy types have good special defense, so we thought that it could have a high special defense at 115 and then good special attack at 105. It definitely looks better on the special side of things. So do you want to talk about where it might sit in terms of viability, Kelly?
Definitely. I think that a lot of this thing's viability in OU depends on what type of utility moves it can get. If this thing gets access to things like Moonlight or Self-Recovery or anything like that, it's going to be much higher. This thing gets access to moves like Encore, it'll be much higher. If it has the ability of Water Veil to switch in, it can be a very good Keldeo switch in, and that's something that's really running rampant in the OU tier right now. If it ends up being in UU, it's a very good switch into Mega Blastoise. It has a lot of potential if it has Recovery, Encore, and really good dual stabs.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it.
That's a really good point, actually. It would take on Mega Blastoise really well. I love Mega Blastoise. I don't want something to be able to just switch in easily. God damn it. Yeah. So, yeah, no, really interesting Pokemon. I think you're right. It has the potential to be really high. If it does get that recovery, it would be quite scary to face. So I think OU is a real possibility there. So, yeah, in terms of grading, what would you give it?
I would easily give this thing a B+, A-. Very, very, very hopeful for this thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's exactly where it'll be sitting on that boundary. Just depending on maybe the moveset, it'll either be OU or high UU. I think that this one definitely has the most potential out of all three in terms of competitive. So, that's the 3 starter final evolution Pokemon that we've talked about. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please let us know how wrong we were in the comment section below. Let us know your ideas for these Pokemon, because we really want to generate discussion with this series. We want to know your ideas. And also, because it's the starters, let us know what starter you're going to be picking. I've seen a lot of love for Rowlet initially, but I think Popplio is definitely gaining an audience there, so it would be interesting to hear that too. The only thing that's left to be said is, if you enjoyed this, feel free to support it by leaving a like and maybe subscribing, because this kind of content is going to be relatively frequent on my channel now. But also, make sure that you check out the next video, which will be on Kelly's channel relatively soon. You can click on your screen, because it might already have the link to that video. He's going to be checking out the Salandit evolution that was leaked in the demo data mine. And also Mudsdale, which looks like a really cool solid Pokemon, so definitely check that out. All that's left to be said is I've been foofootoo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.
Boy.